just my childhood.
I see it, and now it's all within my reach. Possibility. I see it now. It's always been inside of me. Now I feel so free. And there's possibility. And there's possibility. And there's possibility. And there's possibility. And there's possibility.
Nostalgia is a powerful thing. I'm pretty sure all of us have memories with different games. One played Mario, the other played Zelda, and the third played Mega Man. Whatever types of games you've played as a kid, I'm certain most of them taught you something. And for me, many games in my childhood taught me the concept of a boss battle. The concept of this list is pretty simple. This list contains 10 bosses from my childhood that I remember having memories of, good or bad. If I remember it, it counts. Now then, let's see what kind of bosses are down there in the memory lane. I don't have a ton of memories playing this one, but the memories I have are pretty clear. My first experience with Nintendo's consoles was with the GameCube. As a kid, when we traveled to my cousin's place, me and my brother would almost always play with the GameCube. Most of the time we just played Mario Kart Double Dash, but another game I remember playing was Super Mario Sunshine. And the funny thing is, even though the first level, Pianta Hills, is the one level I have the most memories of, the boss I remember facing was Gooper Blooper from Rico Harbor. I don't know, are my memories lying to me with this one, because I seriously don't remember going through Rico Harbor at all, but somehow I remember fighting the boss, pulling Blooper's tentacles as well as the weak point. I remember it all. But therein lies the reason why it's only number 10. Not only are my memories with this boss fight extremely vague, but it could also be that I never actually faced it and just saw someone else playing. But nevertheless, this stupid-ass blooper is still a part of my memories, for better or for worse. While not quite one of the games of my earliest gaming years, Dark Chronicle was actually one of the first RPGs I ever played. And even though my memories only revolve around the first 2 chapters of the game because I couldn't get any farther in that game as a kid, one memory that is quite clear to me is the first proper boss battle of the game, Halloween. Not to be confused with a certain holiday. Halloween is a giant clown mech controlled by the troop leader Flotsam, who has been the primary antagonist of the first chapter. Halloween has 2 main attacks, launching missiles and throwing bombs, robombs, and your objective is to throw these bombs back at Halloween before they explode in order to down him and get some damage done. And he can also summon these balloon minions to help him, and they give you experience?
Wait, does that mean you can grind during this boss?
My nostalgia towards this fight pretty much comes from just facing the first proper boss in the game. I mean, Linda earlier was a complete joke when you had the ride pod, and having this machine as the next boss just kinda intimidated me. Plus, it's satisfying to take this thing down now after you were helpless against it in the prologue, but now you can see just how far you've come after only 1 chapter of this grand adventure. Again, while not the most defining game of my childhood, I hold very special memories towards Ben 10 Protector of Earth. I mean, I was a huge fan of the TV show, so by child logic, I had to own this game. Luckily, it wasn't just a cash grab with Ben's name on it, and it's actually one of my favorite licensed games to this day. However, we're here for the boss battles. I was considering the first boss of this game on this list since it's the first boss you face, but then I decided to go with something more memorable. Namely, the fight with Ghost Freak. In this fight, you first have to stun Ghost Freak while he's possessing the bodies of a wolf, a mummy, and whatever the hell this is. After stunning Ghost Freak, you need to open the curtains in the room to expose him to his weakness, sunlight. After you've done that, Ghost Freak takes the fight downstairs, and you have to expose him to the sun again by reflecting the sunlight from the armor's shiny shields. And then the real fight begins, and Ghost Freak has some variety of attacks, like turning into a shadow, duplicating himself, and lots of other weird stuff. The reason I remember this fight so well is from two reasons. When I first faced this fight, I hadn't actually gotten into the episode in the actual series when Ghost Freak escapes the Omnitrix. And while I knew that he was going to become a villain, seeing that design for the first time in the game... Which leads me to the second reason this fight was so memorable. It's creepy as fuck! I mean, the dark lighting is already unsettling, but look at some of the stuff this guy uses to attack you! I wouldn't be surprised if this fight gave me nightmares as a kid. But even still, the fight with Ghost Freak is a fun and memorable one, albeit being something straight out of my nightmares. As I've said before, the Sonic games aren't really the games from my childhood, but there are still a handful of games I consider nostalgic to me, like Sonic Heroes and the PS2 version of Sonic Unleashed. I remember playing Sonic Unleashed at my friend's house one day. Did I borrow it from him? Anyway, the point is, I was playing my friend's copy of Sonic Unleashed and I came across the first boss of the game. Yes, my number 7 on the list is Egg Beetle from Sonic Unleashed. And while I face the PS2 version of this fight, I'm still going to use footage from the HD version because I can. Anyway, this battle is fairly simple. What you need to do is boost your way to the Beetle and ram its head while avoiding the attacks Eggman's throwing or launching at you. Quite honestly, this fight is pretty easy when you know what you're doing, but as a kid, this fight gave me a little trouble because I didn't know what I was doing. But somehow, my memories of this battle are still mostly positive. I failed a lot of times, sure, but I remember just having a blast with ramming against the machine and stuff. It's a weird feeling to be sure, but that's how I feel. The first Pokemon spin-off I played was the second Pokemon Ranger game, Shadows of Almia. Going into it, I had no idea what the game was like or how it played. But when I started playing, I got the hang of it pretty quickly and started to grow very fond of the game. That was until I reached a dungeon named Peril Cliffs and faced the boss. Out of all the bosses on this list, Rampardos here is the only one from which my memories are actually negative. When I faced this boss, I couldn't beat it. No matter what I did or tried, I would always get screwed over by one of his attacks, namely the one where Rampardos starts bringing down the rocks. At that time, I couldn't find an opening to draw loops around him, which made beating this boss downright impossible for the loop. It wasn't until a few years later when I came back to the game and found out that the proper way to beat the boss was with poke assists. When I finally beat this monster of my childhood, suddenly the negative memories I had of this boss actually turned sort of positive. It made me chuckle at my younger self for not realizing the proper way to beat the Rampardos. But it also made me realize how much I had grown, and that feeling has definitely made this boss for me. And after that, I went on beating the game and it became one of my all-time favorites. But that's a different topic entirely. Like many other people, my childhood was absolutely filled with licensed games. And one such licensed game I grew very fond of, and I still am today, is the licensed game based on Over the Hedge, which is also one of my favorite DreamWorks movies. But we're here to talk about the game's bosses, and once again, I decided to pick the most memorable boss for this list. Meet Mr. Ropley, a director of a theme park who is, well, pretty uncomfortable to be around, to say the least. Especially if you're a band of animals trying to steal a popcorn machine. But even though he's a complete douchebag, his boss fight is quite a ride, if I may say so. In this battle, you need to shoot Ropley with your projectiles while avoiding the fireworks he's launching at you. And at that, the fight is pretty straightforward. However, what brings some tension to this fight is that when you've damaged him enough, Ropley will shoot a firework that's somehow more powerful than the others, which causes the roller coaster track you're on to break down. Now you need to chase Ropley and repeat the action 4 times until he's defeated. What really got me about this fight back in the day was the setting. When I was a child, I loved amusement parks. But at the same time, I wasn't too fond of roller coasters, so the setting stayed in my mind for 2 different reasons. And in a way, Ropley was one of the first video game characters I actually kinda hated, so chasing and bringing him down like that was really satisfying.
Remember, kids? Never go to an amusement park with this guy at the helm.
Ah, Crash Bandicoot, how much of my childhood was wasted on you? If you couldn't tell, the PS2 Crash trilogy is a very nostalgic piece of gaming for me. And this applies especially to the second game, Cortex Strikes Back. And Ripperoo totally gives me all the nostalgias. The fight is pretty straightforward, with Ripperoo jumping around the battlefield and setting explosive boxes on the floor. You have to avoid both the TNT and Nitro boxes and have them explode on Ripperoo, giving you a chance to attack him. Repeat 3 times and the boss battle is over. The reason I remember this boss so well is actually because I was kinda afraid of it as a kid. You see, I used to be afraid of the Nitro boxes. I don't know, something about Crash blowing up into pieces by just touching the box was really terrifying for the little me. Oh, and Ripperoo's demented laugh didn't make it any easier for me.
It's actually pretty creepy even now when I think about it.
But despite my fear-filled memories, I still look back on the first boss of Crash 2 fondly. This demented kangaroo is a big part of my younger gaming years, and frankly, I wouldn't have it any other way. In the series of playing games in the unintended order, the first game in the Ratchet Clank series I played was actually Ratchet Clank 3 at my friend's house. Which brings me to the first level of the game I played, Tyrannosis. Even when playing the game now, getting to this planet gives me all the memories I had of going through this place for the first time. And while most of my memories with Tyrannosis are with the level itself, I could never forget a boss like Mother Tyrannoid. This fight is pretty basic when going down to it. You need to run away from Mother Tyrannoid while avoiding her attacks and also simultaneously attempt to damage her with your weapons. Mother Tyrannoid will swing her claws to damage you, as well as use the machine gun attached to her back to try and put some holes into our Lombax here. At one part of the fight, she will also wreck the room, and you need to escape while avoiding her missiles to continue and finish the battle in another room. Like I said, my memories with Tyrannosis are mostly with the level itself, but for some reason, whenever I think of this level, I always keep coming back to this boss. Maybe its somewhat disturbing design left an impression on the little me. Or maybe it's simply memorable since it was my first boss from the series. Or maybe it was just something like this. Die, alien, die!
Yeah, the last one seems like the most likely option.
I think all of us have that one boss battle which basically taught us what it means to fight a boss in a video game. And for me, that boss is the first boss of Donald Duck Quack Attack, known as... Bernadette the Bird? Ah, fuck it, I'll just call her the Bird for the rest of the segment. That's what I've called her for my entire life. To be honest, this actually might be the first boss I ever faced in a video game. And as you'd expect, it's pretty simple. In this battle, you need to first avoid... fledglings? Someone took a page out of Storm Eagle. Anyways, after the bird runs out of eggs, she will try to flatten you with her tail. Or in layman's terms, she's trying to sit on you with her ass. Repeat the same process 3 times and you... kill the bird?
I sure hope PETA hasn't found this boss fight yet.
My memories of this boss are basically just learning. During my first times playing this, I had pretty hard time with it because I couldn't get the patterns behind the later phases of the fight. But eventually I learned. I got the patterns and started to understand what boss battles really are. And after that, once I became a full-fledged gamer, I started to appreciate bosses in the way I do now, and they're nowadays one of my favorite things in video games. So thanks, Bernadette. You might have tried to eat me, but at least you taught me something valuable. So, what could be the boss that pretty much taught me how to do boss battle? Well, how about a boss that I've faced the most times in my entire life? The boss in question is the first boss of Sly 3, Don Octavio. Now I do have a little story to share behind this boss being number 1, but first let's talk about the battle itself. So in a nutshell, you control Murray and try to slow down Octavio with the help of the tar in the middle of the arena. Once he's in the tar, you need to whack him continuously with your fists while avoiding his attacks. And at one part of the fight, you also have to change the location of the battle to get more tar for slowing down Octavio. The tactic for beating him is still pretty much the same, except now he can attack you with
singing sound waves of doom.
And now for a little story time. Remember when I said that this boss is the one I've faced the most in my life? Well, you see, back when my PS2 was still pretty new, I went and lost my memory card. So naturally, without a memory card, I couldn't save any of my games, but eventually my father bought me a new one. But between that time period, I attempted to get as far into Sly 3 as I could without saving. And eventually, I was able to play through the first episode in one sitting, but never got too far in the second one. But the little me just kept coming back. I still remember playing through Opera of Fear, all the missions leading up to the operation, and this boss fight over and over. And whenever I play it now, I still get back all those great memories from my childhood. And the best part was that after I got my new memory card, I could finally see everything the game had to offer, becoming one of my favorite games of all time. My memories might be more with the entire level itself than just the boss, but even so, Octavio still holds a big place in my memories.
I'm finished checking now, if you'll excuse me. I'm gonna attempt something I couldn't do as a child.
In the future